Stay happy, stay healthy, keep it real.
Hello and welcome to UK Natural Health. My name is Gurds and I'm joined by the lovely Jess from Gathering of Minds. And today we are joined by an incredible woman who is spreading important information about aspartame. Aspartame is found in fizzy and sugary drinks, especially the diet and low sugar variety, and horrifically, it doesn't end there. Dr. Betty Martini DM Hum is on the advisory board of the American Anti-Cancer Institute and in the in-house specialist for the National Health Federation.
Because of her, the Just Like Sugar company made a safe sweetener without chemicals, although she has no financial association. She has made extensive research into the poison which is killing us slowly, and was featured in a documentary, Aspartame, A Sweet Misery, an expose of the dangers of aspartame. Betty is also the founder of Mission Possible, a cause committed to the removal of aspartame from our foods. Please welcome on the show, Dr. Betty Martini D. Hum.
Stay happy, stay healthy, keep it real.
Hello and welcome to the show, Betty. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I guess the first question I want to ask is, where can aspartame be found? What sort of product is it in?
Well, today it's in 14,000 products. And so naturally, it's in your fizzy drinks. We call it Diet Coke here in America. I think you call it Light Coke there, and in Pepsi. But it's also in drugs, which is very serious because aspartame damages the mitochondria, and of the cell, the powerhouse of the cell, and interacts with your drugs and your vaccines. So if you had an aspartame seizure and used anti-seizure medication, it wouldn't work. It's also in anything you see that says sugar-free or, reduced calories. It usually is in there. And in England, the number is E951. So many times you'll just see a number.
Oh my gosh.
And like when I lectured in New Zealand, people didn't even know what 951 was, which is their number there for New Zealand too. Wow. So sometimes we will pick up something like toothpaste and see E951 on it and know that there's aspartame in it. So you have to know all the names. And for instance, it's in Canderel. Now, I was just in England. I was in Dover. And my friend Carl handed me a pink packet of saccharin. And when I picked it up, he said, look on the back of it. And there was aspartame in it, sweet and low. So you have to look on the packet. Here in America, if it says sweet and low, it would just be saccharin. But I was on a ship recently when I stopped into Dover, and I was just shocked because people today, they look at the packets and they know the pink is saccharin, and the yellow is Splenda, which is chlorinated sugar if you like to drink chlorine, and the blue is equal. Well, in this case, someone appeared to be putting saccharin in her coffee, and I said, look at the packet, and on the front it said NutraSweet. So that not necessarily doesn't mean that there wasn't saccharin in it, but this is what the NutraSweet company has done so that they can get as much business as possible. And everybody boycotts NutraSweet, at least on our side that knows about it, wouldn't buy anything that came from the NutraSweet company. Because aspartame was listed with the Pentagon in an inventory of prospective biochemical warfare weapons submitted to Congress. And aspartame is a deadly chemical poison. It has absolutely no use for you. It is pushed on diabetics and is the reason for the diabetic epidemic. It precipitates diabetes. It simulates and aggravates diabetic retinopathy and neuropathy. It destroys the optic nerve. It causes diabetics to go into convulsions. It interacts with insulin, and the free methyl alcohol makes them lose limbs.
Betty, I actually read something earlier when I was doing research on aspartame. And I found that the Diabetic Association in America actually got into trouble for something to do with aspartame, didn't they, in 2004?
Yes, someone filed racketeering charges against them, and they got out of it. But the point was, it was a lesson to them. I call them the ladies of the evening because they take money from, they take money from the manufacturer and push it, and they know better. They've been told. We walk sometimes with the diabetics. You see people walking in equal shirts, and give them information from Dr. H.J. Roberts, who's a diabetic specialist that wrote the medical text, Aspartame Disease, an Ignored Epidemic, 1,000 pages of the horrors that it causes. And people think because it says diet that it is something to make you lose weight, when in fact it makes you crave carbohydrates so you gain weight, which is in the congressional record, which we have on our website, www.mpwhi.com. If you can't remember that, it stands for Mission Possible World Health International. But everything that you think it might be helpful for, it actually is a poison and harms you. So it has caused an epidemic of obesity. Now, Dr. Alemany, who is in Barcelona, and I went to see him. When I first met him, the first thing he said to me when I walked in the door is, "Betty, aspartame will murder 200 million people." And he did the Traco study, which shows that the formaldehyde that is converted from the free methyl alcohol embalms living tissue and damages DNA. But here is the most heinous crime ever committed by the FDA. They made a deal, GD Searle, the original manufacturer, never to allow the public ever to see the teratology studies. And the way I found out about it is the last hero of the
Betty, can we
FDA.
talk about the FDA maybe later? I just wanted to ask you, is aspartame found in health supplements?
In health supplements. Sometimes it is. You just don't know until you look on it. Most health food stores today know that it's a poison and has removed it or does not use it. But every once in a while, we will find something that has aspartame in it. The thing of it is to get people to read the labels.
Well, yeah, this is it.
And in England, it's Canderel.
What are the symptoms and side effects of aspartame? I mean, what sort of problems are they causing for people?
Okay, well, on our website at the very top, you'll see the FDA's own report of 92 symptoms. And number 1 is headache. Number 2 is dizziness. And also joint pain. It hardens the synovial fluids and causes agonizing joint pain. Dr. Roberts has written a paper on joint pain and rheumatoid arthritis, because many times doctors will think that's what it is. It also causes male sexual dysfunction. It ruins female response. And of course, there are symptoms of just about everything that you can think of. There's 4 types of seizures, for instance, on that report. So if you can just imagine a very terrible poison, it just ravages every organ in the body, and the methanol makes you go blind, and that's number 5 on the FDA list. You get optic neuritis and then macular degeneration, and then go blind. That was taken all the way to the Supreme Court in 1986 for politics played out.
Wow, that's
I mean, this is
crazy.
horrendous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Betty, what type of diseases can aspartame cause?
Well, there is a discussion as to which one is the most epidemic, but MS and lupus. I don't know that if you have seen the movie Sweet Misery, A Poison World. You can get it from sweetremedyradio.com. And this is, and it has many of the doctors. The woman that made the movie was in a wheelchair for years. She gained all this weight. She could barely talk or walk. And finally, she read one of my articles and got off of it, walked out of her wheelchair. She had one of the largest lesions ever diagnosed in an MS patient. And 8 months later, it all but disappeared. And she said, a movie needs to be made about it. I said, tell me about it. She said, honey, I own the film company and I'm
brilliant.
on my way to your house.
Oh,
Amazing.
So some of the people that are in the movie are MS patients. Also, it causes lupus because it turns the body against itself. And so that's the other big one that it causes, but it causes, of course, blindness and diabetes and fibromyalgia, which Dr. Roberts calls a junkyard diagnosis. People don't know what it is. And one of the things that most people don't know is that it depletes serotonin and it causes mental diseases. And many of the doctors I work with say that the mental hospitals are full of people that are nothing in the world but aspartame victims. It also causes Alzheimer's. And Dr. Roberts has written a book called Defense Against Alzheimer's Disease. Neurosurgeon Dr. Russell Blaylock has written a lot about these neurodegenerative diseases. He's especially interested in Parkinson's. And this is how I found out originally, was I had a friend with Parkinson's and with a medical background. I knew you didn't get it one day and die the next, and he appeared to be dying. His arms and legs would kick out. That's when I met Dr. Roberts, and he said he is probably drinking Diet Coke with his L-Dopa, and it was interacting. And as soon as we got him off of it, all those reactions stopped. The bad thing is that doctors don't know, because these trade organizations like the American Diabetes Association, American Dietetics Association, the MS people, all take money from the manufacturer and tell the public that it's safe and tell doctors that it's safe, and they have absolutely no idea of what it's caused. And as Dr. Ralph Walton says, who is a psychiatrist, he said, no doctor should ever see a patient without first taking a dietary history and finding out if he's on aspartame, because that will affect, everything. His body is poisoned and will cause all these problems. And many times, all you have to do is get them off, and these things will disappear.
But this is the point, isn't it? I mean, doctors don't have a clue really about nutrition these days. You go into your GP, general practitioner. I went to my doctor's just to register because I'd moved to a new area. And, and I tried to talk to him about nutrition just to see what was what. And he didn't have a clue. He didn't have a clue.
That's right.
But it's sign of the times. Doctors are now sales reps, drugs pushers, just legal drugs pushers in this country. They're just writing out prescriptions willy nilly without checking what is the person putting in the diet. Could it be a deficiency? Could it be over? You know what I mean? They're not looking into these things. But I want to speak to you a bit about the FDA. But before we move on to that, so we've covered the background about how dangerous aspartame is. But Betty, can you please explain to everyone how it's produced? Because I think this is very, very important to hit the message home.
How it's produced? Well, actually, aspartame is, it's got 40% aspartic acid. And the propaganda about this is, these are the proteins of life, but you cannot, you can't isolate it. And Dr. John Oney did the research on it, and it caused holes in the brains of mice. So it is an excitotoxin that Dr. Blaylock wrote a book about, excitotoxins, the taste that kills. And then you've got phenylalanine, which, they'll say you find in meat and milk. And that's true, but about 5%, not 50%. And you can't isolate phenylalanine either. And at 50%, it goes past the blood-brain barrier, floods the brain. And then you've got this methyl ester that immediately becomes free methyl alcohol, a severe metabolic poison that converts to formaldehyde and formic acid and causes metabolic acidosis. The entire molecule breaks down to something called diketopiperazine, which is a brain tumor agent and caused brain tumors in original studies. But G.D. Searle excised the brain tumors, put the rats back in the study, and when they died, they resurrected them on paper, which is why they tried to indict them for fraud. So the whole molecule is nothing but a bunch of poisons, and it is genetically engineered with E. coli bacteria. So if you want to know,
yes, can we go into this E. coli bacteria? So can you just make it crystal clear? So what did they do? What did they do to the E. coli bacteria, and how do they get this aspartame from this E. coli bacteria?
Well, Dr. Deagle once explained it because he worked next to the Augusta manufacturing plant, and he said they insert some genes and then they get it into a white powder, and then it's sent out. But anyway, this is the normal way you genetically engineer something, but you're talking about nothing but E. coli bacteria. Somebody called me from down there very sick when I first started out and asked him, well, you're down there making it. What is it? And I said, listen, lady, all we've got down here is toxic waste. That's what you're eating.
So basically,
what you're eating.
So let's get this straight. The FDA are basically flooding our food chain with a toxic waste coming from E. coli bacteria.
Right. And the FDA, keep in mind, they did not want this on the market. They tried to indict them, but both U.S. prosecutors hired on with a defense team, and the statute of limitations expired. And then after that, they revoked the petition for approval. And so G.D. Searle hired Don Rumsfeld. I'm sure you know who he is. Mm-hmm. And he said, in the congressional record, so it's a matter of record, I'll call in my markers, and we'll get it on the market anyway. And what was those markets? President Reagan had promised to nominate him for vice president, and instead nominated Bush. So President Reagan wrote an executive order making the FDA powerless to do anything about aspartame until he could appoint a new FDA commissioner. Dr. Goyen would have signed the revoke petition into law, but he couldn't. And I spoke to his wife, and he said that they got a call at 3 a.m. in the morning and fired him. And so 30 days later, they got Arthur Ho Hayes, who was put there to get aspartame on the market. He overruled the Board of Inquiry and put it on the market. And that's how it got there. And of course, being a poison, it was people were going blind, people were having seizures, getting MS. There were 3 congressional hearings, and the bill to put a moratorium on it and to do studies on what they were seeing in the population was what it does to the fetus, the behavioral problems, the interaction of drugs, the seizures, and it never got out of committee. Monsanto had bought it by this time, and they paid Senator Hatch and other senators, and that's the way politics go. And they left this deadly chemical poison on the market, which has caused an epidemic of autism throughout the world and has destroyed the brains of our children. Dr. Walton is now doing a study on it and asked anyone who has given birth since 1984 to fill out the form and email it to him. That is on our website.
Betty, can we move on to kind of the clinical trials of aspartame?
You mean the studies that have been done?
Yes.
Well, the studies, Dr. Ralph Walton actually did the research for 60 Minutes, and he found that almost 100% of all independent studies showed the problems. It showed that it caused seizures and all the problems that we're seeing in the population. And only the studies that were done by industry ever said that it was safe. And of course, those are fixed. And we even gave all the information on how they fix those studies to the European Food Safety Authority, which I have worked with EFSA. And this is a very interest to Europe, is that when they did a review and said aspartame was safe, Parliament got all over them. And they said, look, there was just a study in Denmark on 60,000 women showing that it causes preterm birth, like over 70%. And all these new studies were coming out showing it causes heart attacks and strokes, it causes sudden cardiac death, that it raises fasting blood sugar, of course, and obesity. And Parliament said, go do it over again. So they did. And I was thinking now, with all these studies showing absolutely, emphatically, aspartame is a chemical poison that causes disease, what they would do. There were 82 scientific peer-reviewed studies, and EFSA threw them out and said they were unreliable and said aspartame was safe. And there's nobody in Europe that's going to prosecute them for what they did.
Wow. I mean, is there a safe dose, right? Can somebody have, like, you know, the odd can of Coca-Cola or something and be safe? Or is that actually going to affect them as well?
It's cumulative. And so after Dr. Safredi in Italy did 3 studies showing that it's a multi-potential carcinogen and causes everything from lymphoma, leukemia, cancer of the breast, kidney disease, cancer, liver cancer, lung cancer. So this is one of the worst things that could happen. And actually, this was known originally, and the FDA themselves told Congress and said that it violated the Delaney Amendment, and they didn't do a thing. It said it violated because of the brain tumors and brain cancer. And he said if the FDA violates its own law, who's left to protect the public? And it also is of interest to England as to how it got approved there. G.D. Searle knew that if England ever found out that they wanted them indicted for fraud, that they would never, ever allow it to be approved there. But there was a Dr. Paul Turner in the agency, and he made a deal with G.D. Searle, a business deal, and approved it without anybody knowing. And Parliament found out, and it was a big blowout, but they didn't rescind the order. The story was in The Guardian, and all you've got to do is Google how aspartame got approved in England, and you can find out the whole story.
So how long has aspartame been in the UK?
It was approved in America in 1981, and I think it was about 3 years later, but that article will tell you.
My God. So we've basically grown up on aspartame. My God, that's ridiculous.
I mean, I didn't actually know that. This is news to us, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was in England. We've known about it in England for a long time now, but I didn't realise it was since the 80s. Wow.
Yeah. I was just talking to Jess earlier about when I was growing up, and I used to drink a lot of Coca-Cola.
Yeah, same.
All the time, and I used to have a lot of light, kind of bright visions. But yeah, that's ridiculous. So, Betty, why are the FDA approving it?
Why did they approve it? It was done by politics. They did not want to approve it. You know, they talk about the old FDA and the new FDA. And the old FDA, actually, the big pharma was the adversary, and they had to make sure something was safe. But once Arthur Hull Hayes came in there, they called it the new FDA, and they became just an extension of Big Pharma. I call them Big Pharma's Washington branch office. And today, the FDA gets over half of their funding from Big Pharma. And they absolutely admit that they're their customer and they want to make them happy. And so they put things on the market like Vioxx that killed more people than the Vietnam War. And they get away with all this stuff. And so when I came to England, just before I left, I filed a citizen's petition for ban. FDA is supposed to answer it, in 180 days. Well, they never answered it. They sent me a note saying that they had more important things to do. So in 2007, an attorney told me file an imminent health hazard. They have to answer in a week and 10 days. Well, they know I've got all their records, so they wouldn't answer that either. They sent another letter saying they had more important things to do. Well, in 2009, they called me and told me it wasn't going to happen. And I said, I lecture all over the world, and people are sick and dying. And here's what Dr. Michael Delaney told me. So what? We need to depopulate.
Right, this was going to be my next question. This is my next question to you. All right, so we know it's causing people infertility problems, both male and female. We know it's killing people, it's poisoning people. I was just about to ask you, is this population control?
Well, that's what the FDA said, because we have a law over there, a bill, Agenda 21, which is depopulation. And they really don't care. And it's very, very obvious, because I've dealt with the FDA all these years. I've written the Freedom of Information articles that they won't answer. And this is all against the law, and they serve above the law. In fact, there is a book on it that the FDA serves above the law. I call them the fatal drugs allowed folks. And and EFSA is just as bad. I'm really upset at EFSA for throwing out all those studies that proved how poisonous, and they didn't care. They simply didn't care.
Well, they don't care. They don't care.
So, Betty, can we just go maybe back to basics? Kind of, how did you start with all of this? And how did you get involved?
Actually, I had retired, I had been in an accident, and when this happened, when this man got Parkinson's, I read Dr. Roberts' first book, and when I read it about the seizures and the MS and all these diseases that it was causing, I started getting people off of it, and the seizures would go away. The MS victims would walk out of wheelchairs, and it was the most incredible thing. And I called Dr. Roberts back, and I said, Dr. Roberts, are we talking about a global plague? He said, yes, we are, all over the world. Well, my husband, we're Jehovah's Witnesses, so he, and our ministers are not paid. So he had his own business, and he had just sold his company and retired. He wanted to show me the world. And he says, well, we can't love our neighbor as ourselves if we have this knowledge and just let people be poisoned. So we started a global network all over the world. We have operations in 43 countries, including all parts of England and Scotland. And that was all those years ago. I never realized that over 20 years later, I'd still be here and still doing this. But I didn't realize how hard it was to get it off the market. So that's how I got started, and none of us are paid. It's cost us more than our home, and we've used up all his retirement funds to do it, but we don't sell anything or make any money. All we're doing is trying to save lives.
So that's basically your motive here, is to help, counteract what the governments are trying to do, which is depopulation. So you're actually giving up your life, really devoting your life to this, to save people. I mean, that's amazing, Betty. That really is. I've got so much respect for you, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, you get a lot of satisfaction when you see somebody like Corey Brackett, who was in a wheelchair, get her life back. And you see people who suffer from seizures for years all of a sudden are well again. There was a woman in England who had all these things she wanted to do for a future, but suffered seizures all these years and never knew why until we got there. And of course, when she got off of it, the seizures stopped.
Wow.
And it said, look, it ruined my entire life. And gave up the occupation that she wanted to do. Wow. And that's what it's doing all over the world. People are absolutely consuming this terrible poison. And now, if you think that's bad, they took aspartame, and they know that we warned everybody off, and they're putting a new one on the market called Advantame.
Yes.
And it's already been approved by EFSA. It's already been approved by the FDA. And it's just more aspartame, and then it's got Advantame acid. What is it? Well, nobody has ever consumed it. So who's going to be the guinea pigs? The public. And it's got vanillin in there. If you Google vanillin and E. coli, you'll see that it's genetically engineered, usually with aspartame, and they admit it's another aspartame product. And we really don't know how bad it's going to be. There were only 12-week studies, and there were problems with it. Wow. And they just didn't care and approved it. So now we've got the problem of having Advantame on the market.
My God.
And best thing to do is to stay off of all these artificial sweeteners. Now, I will say that I was talking to somebody in the who grew herbs in the Amazon rainforest, and I said, we got a big problem, because as soon as they get off of it and get well, they'll say, well, what sweetener can I use?
Yes.
And there's nothing to offer them. So they made one for us, and we have no financial association to it, called Just Like Sugar.
Wow.
And it's absolutely safe, because Dr. Blaylock said, oh, wait a minute, we have to have this analyzed. And we did at UNESCO, and it showed that all it is in there is organic chicory, which has been used for 70 years to improve the health of diabetics, some vitamin C from organic oranges, and orange peel and calcium, and it's safe, and it's being sold now in England.
That's great. So what are companies buying it? Are people buying it? Where can people buy it?
Yes, well, actually, all you have to do is get on their website, put your zip code in there, or you can email them from England, and they'll tell you. They have a distributor there in England, and they'll tell you where to get it. But people are now using it in England, so there is a safe sweetener.
Do you ever see aspartame being banned?
I can't. The last word I don't understand. Aspartame being
Banned.
Banned mean finished.
Oh,
to ban
finished. Oh, yes, people are taking it out. But for instance, Yoplait, which is yogurt, just took it out. But they put Splenda in there, and Splenda is chlorine, and they have so many problems with Splenda. And I asked Dr. James Bowen, I said, what happens when they get off of aspartame and get on to Splenda? He said, well, they'll maintain the reactions from aspartame because they're chemically sensitive for life, and then they'll pick up the reactions from Splenda. So that's a problem. But I'll tell you what, Just Like Sugar has made some products, everything from cookies, hot chocolate. You know, I stopped using hot chocolate because I picked up some in the grocery store, and it must have had 56 chemicals in it, and I gave it up. So Just Like Sugar has made it, and it's nothing in it but dark chocolate and organic pure vanilla bean, and it is wonderful. So they are making other products, and so there's something out there healthful if we can just notify people to get off of these artificial sweeteners. But then we have another problem, at least here in America. The dairy people petitioned the FDA to allow it unlabeled. And now when people complained, excuse me, the FDA said, look, we just took something like chocolate milk for the kids and took off reduced calories because that tells them there's probably aspartame in it. So in other words, because the children won't use it, the FDA is admitting they're taking off the labeling so they won't know it and they'll have to use it anyway. And
Betty, what about there's organic greens and blacks chocolate? Will that have same additives in there as well, like normal chocolate?
Well, you have to read the label. You wouldn't know until you look at the label, but you do have to worry because these things are exported to England on the dairy product, and that they have taken off the labeling on 17 dairy products.
My God.
So this is to hide what is going on really inside of this product.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's really hard to know. Sometimes you just don't know until all of a sudden you eat something like in restaurants and you get a headache. So, for instance, give you an example. I called Mars and I said, okay, tell me what products have aspartame. He said, Mars bars. I said, I don't see it on the label. He said it's under natural flavors.
What?
So if you see something that says artificial and natural flavors, don't use it. Like Dr. Robert says, when in doubt, throw it out. If you see all these labels of things you can't pronounce, don't put it in your mouth.
What?
Give up processed food.
What are some of the names that are being disguised? That aspartame is being disguised as? What are some of the names?
Well, here in America, equal, spoonful, natural flavors, artificial flavors, nature taste.
Huh?
So they put, because the patent has expired, anybody can use it and anybody can put a label on it, like sugar 1 or sugar 2, and one will be sugar and one will be have aspartame in it. And one of the things I noticed when I went to the grocery store there in England is that they mix it. They mix it with sugar. And I'll tell you something else. I talked to your food standards, and because it just destroys the brains of our children, I asked them what their regulations were. And up to about 3 years, they're not supposed to be using them. But they're not doing anything about it, because I walked down your street and I bought a product called Bubbly, Bubble. And it looks like something you blow bubbles with. It's got brilliant blue dye. And horrified, I read the label, which has got saccharin, aspartame, citric acid, and brilliant blue dye, and no food.
So it's basically just flavourings masking poisons.
Right. And I called food standards and I said, this is against the law. And they didn't say anything, and it's still being sold as far as I know there in England. Given to the children there. That's why they have ADD, ADHD, all these things, because aspartame completely destroys the brain.
Wow, this is just shocking. Yeah, my brain is I'm just so shocked that we're being brainwashed.
The studies that they didn't let the public see, that it took me 8 years to get, showed neural tube defects. That's autism, spina bifida, cleft palate. And so you have to keep children free of these terrible chemicals.
Betty, what kind of problems have you faced with the FDA?
Well, I don't face any problems with them, except that they won't do anything, that they won't take it off the market. The reason they won't answer me is I have all their records. You go to my website, there are the congressional records. All the evidence is there. And I have all of the FDA's records. And in fact, Dr. Roberts, unfortunately, died a little over a year ago, but he left me his 30 years of records on aspartame. So I have everything, and they can't lie about it, because I've got Dr. Adrian Gross's statement to Congress that it violates the law. Like he said, if the FDA violates its own law, who's left to protect the public? And Jerome Bressler told me the same thing. If you get on our website, you see the complete Bressler report. He's the one, he was the last hero of the FDA, and he wrote the shenanigans that they did and the fraud that they did. But we noticed that some of the records had been stripped. And that's when I found out. I called and thanked him for being honest, and he said, Betty, you've got to didn't you notice something's missing? I said, yes, I sure did. He said, these 2 studies the public doesn't know, and you've got to find these studies. And I didn't want to be the only one to know. So I told Dr. Roberts and Dr. Blaylock, who both called him. Dr. Roberts wrote his congressman, who wrote the FDA. The FDA wrote back and said they were confidential. Yes, they were confidential because it was showing that this is a reason for the autism epidemic. It took me 8 years to find those. And so what happened was, after I added it back to the Bressler report, and I went to Chicago, we gave them to Jerome Bressler, who at this time was aged and dying in a nursing home. And even though he was dying, he would go down in the cafeteria. He didn't tell him he worked for the FDA. He said, it's poison. Stop drinking these diet drinks, to his dying day. Anyway, then when I put him back into the Bressler report, the FDA knew it was over. So they released 4 more of these horrible studies to Dr. Money, who wrote this incredible book called While Science Sleeps, A Sweetener Kills. And he has released all the information about the methanol. You can get on his website while Science Sleeps and read the last chapter free on how aspartame causes autism.
Betty, we're coming towards the end of the show. What kind of advice would you give to anyone who's consuming aspartame?
Well, I would tell them to email me at bettym19@mindspring.com, or if you put the aspartame resource guide on your website, so they will get all that information on how to get detox, what they have to do. Like Dr. Blaylock says, for the rest of their life, they must take magnesium because it protects the heart and the brain from excitotoxins, how to flush out your body, and the different supplements to use. There is Dr. Caldwell's detox program, and he says once you use it and your body is clean, then the supplements will work better. And so, and then you can also subscribe to our aspartame information list on my website. And so this is what I would tell people to do, and to begin to read labels and make sure that they don't use anything that is a chemical or eat processed food.
Wow. So what if anyone has symptoms? Say if someone's sat at home and they're listening to this interview and they've realised they've been consuming aspartame and they've probably got some symptoms, what advice would you give to those people?
Well, first of all, I would tell them to get in touch with me so I can send them the report on what symptoms they have. Because the first thing I did when I started this, I said, nobody knows Dr. Roberts. And if I tell them it's one thing, but if a world-renowned doctor has it on their stationery, their doctor will believe them. So that he has written all these position papers like aspartame in pregnancy, aspartame in diabetes, aspartame in joint pain. And I would get them these reports, and I've been working with these doctors now for over 20 years. They've written articles for me. For instance, I was so upset about what was going on in schools that I got all the doctors to write articles on how aspartame destroys the brains of our children. And if you scroll down on my website, you'll see it, Report for Schools, and it's got all the doctors' reports in it. And I tell people to send it to their teachers, their principal, and their Board of Education and whatnot. There was the most incredible report that I sent to Prince Charles over there. They took out all the fizzy drinks out of one of your schools and just left the aspartame drinks. And one person, a 16-year-old, got so sick from it, they thought he was on drugs, and they called the police.
Oh,
What?
Yes, and finally it was the janitor that saw him. He was crying and took him to the headmaster and told him, this is aspartame that did this to him. His parents made him sleep by their bed, because thought he was out on drugs.
Oh.
And so paid off. And I didn't hear from Prince Charles, but I did send him that. And the ecologist, which if you want to get the whole story, we put it on web, or you can Google ecologist 2005 aspartame. That's from England. You know, the ecologist, which starts off, once upon a time, there was a biochemical warfare weapon. It gives the whole history as I've given it to you in that magazine, 17 pages, front story on it. And I sent that to Prince Charles and the movie Sweet Misery of Poison World, and to let them know what was going on there in England.
So, Betty, it's really important that our listeners are able to get in contact with you. So can you give us your website address, your documentary, and your contact for yourself?
Okay, my email is Betty, BETTYM, for Martini, Betty M, 19, like 19, at mindspring.com, MINDSPRING.com. The website is mpwhi.com. And my number is 770-242-2599. I'm very accessible. My telephone number is all over the internet, and I make sure that anybody can find me.
Betty, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been so insightful, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people, because a lot of people don't actually know about aspartame over in England. And, I find that really, it's just, everyone needs to find out about it.
Yes, actually, they really protect England and France, because they know people know in the United States. And just to show you how much they protect it, they didn't know I was coming the first time, and it was in the newspapers. The second time, immigration actually locked me up for 3.5 hours with,
What?
If we let you in England, how many people will find out about aspartame?
Wow.
Aspartame.
That's
the
shocking.
power that they have. And I got into England, but they had sent their attorneys to the newspapers to stop the people of England from getting the information.
Wow.
My God, that's insane. Betty, just for the viewers to check out your documentary, what is it called on YouTube?
It's called Sweet Misery, A Poison World. And it's www.sweetremedy.radio.com. You can get it from Corey Brackett, who made this movie, and or you can Google it, whatever you want. It's on our website. But Sweet Misery, and they also made Sweet Remedy. But Sweet Misery should be seen by everybody, because that has the whole story of the FDA and what happened, and they interviewed all of the doctors, these world-renowned doctors. I'm in it as well. And it even tells you about how they got to the CDC, the Center for Disease, and put out a summary that contradicted the deadly investigation they did. And they put out that it was mild findings. And I says, I've never seen a case of a mild grand mal seizure, of a glad cardiac arrest, and I've definitely never seen a mild case of death, which was reported by the Center for Disease Control.
Wow. Betty, thank you so much for being on the
thank
show.
you. Absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. And good luck with everything that you're doing in the future as well.
Okay. Keep you advised.
All
Bless
right.
you.
Thanks, Betty. Take care now.
Bye.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Stay happy, stay healthy, keep it real.
Well, I think that was probably one of the most important interviews that we've done so far. As far as, because aspartame is everywhere. It's in everything. And I think people really need to have the choice if they want to consume this food or not. The disguise in the name of it, trying to hide it and masquerade it is sugar and things, when actually it's not anywhere near a sugar. It's not even a food.
It's just shocking that even the shops that we think have natural drinks in there, they're not actually natural. If they're natural, they would go off in 2 days.
Yeah.
And so guys, you need to be aware that check what you're eating, check what you're drinking, because guarantee it, there is going to be E. coli in there. And it's just really shocked by what Betty said today. I don't know what to think, because it's just, it's disgusting. And it does kind of make sense that they are trying to bring down the population. It really does, Jess.
Yeah, it does. Everything points to it. No cancer rates are dropping. There's no heart disease rates dropping. Everyone is getting sicker. Why? It's all the chemicals, all the toxins, toxic build-up in our bodies. Our bodies are turning into plastic. When we take anything in our body that is formaldehyde or reacts and turns into formaldehyde, we are embalming ourselves alive. It's as simple as that. You've got to wake up, right? Wake up and check your products. Check what you eat and try and just, stay away from the processed and tinned and packaged food, because it's those foods that are going to end up killing you. It's those foods that are going to give you all these diseases and illnesses.
At the end of the day, if you look at the older generation, why did they live a lot longer? Why were they a lot more healthier? Why is their memory a lot more better and our generation's a lot worse? It's because we eat a lot of processed foods and a lot of processed drinks as well, so we need to be aware of these things, but unfortunately it is the end of the show. If you'd like more information, you can go to our Twitter page at UK Natural Health and E is with a 4. You can also find us on Listen on Demand, also on UK Health Radio.
Also, if you would like to check out the Gathering of Minds website, there's going to be an article on there about the aspartame with a lot of links to the stuff that Betty was talking about. You can find that at ourgom.com, so ourgom.com/aspartame.
And just what's your Twitter page?
Oh, my Twitter page is gathering_minds.
Okay, great. And then if anybody would like to find me, I'm at I am Gurds.
We'll see you guys soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay happy, stay healthy, keep it real.